Hey everybody. So in a recent interview with Fox and Friends, Donald Trump did what I feel like can only accurately be described as saying the quiet part loud. So let's take a look at the clip and then we'll come back and we'll talk about it.
I will tell you this. If you look at before and after, the things they had in there were crazy. They had things, levels of voting that if you ever agreed to it, you'd never have a Republican elected in this country again. They had things in there about, election days and what you do and all sorts of clawbacks. And they had things that were just totally crazy.
So what Donald Trump was referencing there were Democrats were trying to put some provisions in the recent stimulus package that was passed by Congress that basically would have allowed for people in places that are being affected by the coronavirus to vote by mail. It sounded like he was referencing some sort of election day there. I hadn't heard about that, but maybe they were also pushing for maybe making election day a national holiday. And you could disagree on whether or not that belongs in the stimulus package. I honestly kind of agree that maybe that sort of legislation doesn't kind of belong in a stimulus package, but that's not the part that I'm interested in. The part that I found particularly interesting about that clip is that Donald Trump says there, he goes, you would have seen levels of voting where you never would have had another Republican elected again. And what he means by that is that if you made it so easy for people to vote, there would be so many more people voting, and that Republicans just wouldn't be able to win from that. And that's very interesting because so often you hear Republicans saying, one, that just voter suppression doesn't exist in general, and two, that even if voter suppression was happening, if we eliminated it, it wouldn't tip the scales in either direction. But I think that we could just figure out on face value that just isn't accurate. I know that there's a lot of people that don't even really believe that voter suppression exists, but one of the things that I'm referencing when I'm talking about voter suppression is in the recent primaries that happened in Texas, you had people who were waiting for over 5 hours to cast their vote. And that just seems incredibly undemocratic to me. I just don't see how you can make a reasonable case that, and this was back on Super Tuesday, so this is Tuesday, this is a work day, and you had people where if they wanted to vote, they had to wait for over 5 hours, they had to take 5 hours out of their day to vote. That just doesn't seem right. That doesn't seem, because especially when, who are those people, who is that going to most negatively impact? It's going to negatively impact people who can't necessarily take the time out of their day to go and spend 5 hours in line, people who maybe are working two jobs, maybe some lower wage jobs. And so those people are very negatively impacted by these long lines you see at polling stations, which makes it much more like we should make it where people can vote by mail. I live in Oregon and we can vote by mail, and I think that it is a great thing that all states should implement. You can still have like in-person polling places that people can go to, but I think that every state should offer a vote by mail option. I just find it so hilarious in that clip that Donald Trump is just kind of blatantly saying that if more people were voting, there would be less Republicans being elected. And I find that a little bit telling, maybe, about how popular certain Republican ideas are. I don't know. I know that there are Republicans who would disagree with that idea, but I mean, when you have the president of the United States saying that if more people were voting, if we had levels of voting that the stimulus bill would have kind of allowed for, no Republicans would be elected. It's kind of hard to argue with that being the case. And as I said before, the idea really does make sense on its surface. I mean, lower income people are more likely to vote Democrat, and so if lower income people are more negatively impacted by voter suppression, then it kind of makes sense that if you eliminate the voter suppression, then the elections would start to swing more towards the Democrats. I know that there are even people that say maybe it shouldn't be easy to vote, maybe you should make it difficult to vote, but that's not even really what I'm talking about in this video. What I'm talking about is the fact that if we did make it easier, where every person had a very reasonable chance of being able to vote, because even if you had voting by mail, there still would be instances where people would be unable to vote, but being able to vote by mail, it would allow for so many more people to vote. And so if we had that, there would be more Democrats elected. That is just, that seems to be what would happen. Well, I just think that even if you make the case that like, okay, that's not what we should do for this other reason, because like, maybe I honestly don't know what the reason would be. Perhaps you could say maybe if someone isn't in the position to take 5 hours out of the day to go and vote, maybe they shouldn't be voting in the first place. I know that there's people who'd maybe make that argument. I would thoroughly disagree with that, but maybe you could make that argument. But regardless, that's not the case that Donald Trump was making there. He was just saying that if they had the levels of voting that people were pushing for in that stimulus package, you'd never see another Republican elected in some areas. And I find that incredibly telling, and it's just another example of Donald Trump kind of saying the quiet part loud and not exactly knowing some of the things that are kind of supposed to be trade secrets of the Republican Party. He's just kind of talking about it. And so I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you disagreed with anything I said, please leave a comment below. And if you enjoyed the video, make sure to like and subscribe, and have a great day.